Hello, and welcome to another episode of the TF Cast.
Today with us, we have Emily Stark, a professor, photographer, and dancer, with us to talk about her project coming in at the 410 Strange Eons. Will you introduce the project and tell us when it's happening?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. It is a photography show, my first photography show, my first art show of any type. And yes, so it's at the 410 Project. It'll be the next one in there right after Abby Dalecki's show wraps up this weekend. And it runs from November 27th through December 13th in the gallery. There will be a reception. As of now, we're still planning on doing a reception on Friday, December 4th from 7 to 9 p.m. Otherwise, gallery hours are Thursday through Sunday afternoons.
Cool. And what can people going to the gallery expect to see?
So mostly what I do for photography is landscape and nature shots. And I've been doing this for 6, 7, 8 years now and gradually accumulating a lot of work. And when I look at it, the things that I'm drawn to photograph and the pictures that I wind up really liking the most are the ones where there's some element of the odd or macabre or something weird is happening around me, and I just happen to be able to capture that with my camera. And so that's what I'm focusing this show on. I'm calling it landscapes, very broadly defined, in the sense that landscape as in I didn't do anything to set up the shot or make the shot happen. Something just happened and I got a picture of it, which might be only like my own very personal definition of landscape. I don't know if any other photographer would agree with that, but that kind of gave me a focus to say, okay, what's something about this is the world that I've seen, and here's how I've tried to capture that in interesting or compelling ways.
That's cool. So how does that look? Do you find yourself driving around, like looking for strange
I do.
scenes?
I totally. Well, I grew up also out in the country outside St. Peter. And so I do really like rural scenes, and especially solitary trees, those trees that you see on the edge of a field where everything else is fields, and there's one cool looking tree. And there actually are a few trees that I go visit at different times during the year. But yeah, I do drive around. I look for falling down barns. I love an old barn, old tree. And then sometimes you get interesting, like rusty farm machinery or cool piles of wood, that type of thing. I do a lot of walking as well. And what types of odd things do people have in their backyards? And so, there are a fair bit of photos where I saw something and then maybe not perfectly safely, like pulled over, did a U-turn and thought, oh my gosh, I have to quick get a picture of that. That's super weird.
That's awesome. That's a cool way of finding stuff. And there's something about the rural areas of Minnesota and this area in general, where there's a lot of interesting spaces, whether it's yards with tons of old rusty things like you're suggesting, or kind of the nature we have going on here. So that's super cool that you're able to go capture that.
Yeah, you have a nice mix of the farmland, but there's still enough of the rivers and lakes. So you'll have like maybe a nice little forest behind a farm. So yeah, the variety in what you have just for a landscape down here makes it very interesting to photograph. And yeah, you've got these farm families who have lived in these places for generations, and they're never going to throw out a tractor, right? They're just going to park it in the corner and keep adding more to that. So it's like these little living sculpture gardens all over the place.
I think some of them run forever too.
Oh yeah, those old tractors.
Yeah, I heard something on the radio a long while ago, it was earlier this year, where they were saying there'd been so much legislation on who can even work on the new tractors that the price for old ones had gone up because people can maintenance them.
That's interesting, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. You were talking about how you always find an element of macabre, or you have some interest in it. Is that something you noticed in your own work and cultivated, or something that you've just always had?
I mean, just in general as a person, I think it's something I've always had and sought out. I love horror movies and Stephen King books. And I grew up out in the country just outside St. Peter. And so I do remember really vividly, like the thing that scared me from my childhood was thinking about that state hospital in St. Peter and joking, the movies where someone escapes from the asylum, like Halloween made a big impression on me when I was young. So I've always been interested in that type of thing. And then, but I've also, like you said, cultivated that purposely. And some of that's because, I'm not a professional photographer. I am capturing the things that I see. I feel like, I can take a pretty nice picture of a tulip or of flowers. A lot of people can do that really, really well. But I think something that I can do well that isn't necessarily the type of thing that I see done better at any art show I go to is that, well, what's the odd thing? Even what's the paint peeling off the surface in a detail look that you wouldn't necessarily stop to look at, but now you've noticed it and you're noticing the colors or the textures of it because of my picture. So in some ways it was a way for me to focus, to feel like, oh, here's something I can actually contribute that seems both authentic to me, but different from what other people are doing.
I see. Yeah, and I've noticed going through your photography page, you've also kind of been, I can't even, there was a drop-down page where you had a whole list of travel locations. You've clearly had some opportunities to travel. Does that hold up when you, are you finding the macabre in other places? I wasn't able to go through all of it. But.
I do. I love going to old cemeteries. And so that, especially when I've been to England and Scotland, they're old cemeteries, these moss-covered tombstones from who knows how long. I had the opportunity to tour, it's called the Bone Church right outside Prague, where it's a crypt where they had tons and tons and tons of bodies and hired someone to basically say, hey, we need you to do something with these skeletons. And what they did was decorate the entire inside of this basement crypt with human bones. Most of them would have been plague victims from like the 12 and 1300s. And it's just the type of place, it's one of those kind of tourist places, but it's an actual church and an actual crypt and actual human bones. And I think I took about 1,000 pictures of everything on the walls. So I do, when I travel places, I do try and seek out like, well, what's something that seems interesting or a little dark or just beautiful in an odd way that I can try and go take a picture of.
I feel like a lot of people are drawn to those. I think they're called ossuaries.
Yes, that is the exact correct term.
Yeah, because who was it? The guy who did Alien, H.R. Geiger.
Yes, yeah. All his drawings,
Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff, he took the inspiration from like some ossuaries in, I don't even remember what country.
Well, that makes sense because you can see that in his drawings, especially in Alien. Like it does seem very like like you can see vertebrae, I think, in, like the head of that alien creature. Like it does look like this is someone has looked at a lot of bones and now has put them together in this odd, weird way. So, it's interesting. And there's something that's very just solemn about it. These are actual people. And I think it's a neat series of choices to say, well, what if it's also art? And we let people come look at it.
Yeah, I wonder, I can't help but wonder when the last time someone was approved to use that medium.
I don't know. And I wish I knew a little bit more of the story behind the Bone Church before I just started talking about it. But what I recall is that this person was hired and wasn't necessarily told like, hey, decorate with all the bones, but that's just what they did. And it was just like, well, fine, I guess this is fine. I guess this is what we have now. This just happened. So I don't even know if that's a case of someone being given permission to do that or just thinking, I don't know, I've got 2,000 skeletons. Let's go.
Yeah, that's taking your artistic liberties to a next level.
It's a lot. I'm not advocating for using actual human pieces in art. Let me just make that very clear right now.
We have Bodyworks. What is that?
Yeah, the body. Yeah, that is actual plastinated muscle and organs, and that is also very beautiful art too.
Yeah, I don't know if people. I think it's art. It's got to be art.
It's one of those neat melding of, can we use art and science together? How do we inspire people to be interested in the human body in a beautiful way? So sure, we'll count that.
Is it called the Sedlec Ossuary?
Yes, Sedlec Ossuary.
That's cool. I see some neat photos. We don't have our whole thing set up, but I want to see if this works. Oh, my focus is off. That's okay.
I'm sure that was great.
It's it's not that cute.
I have a couple pictures from there in my show, so if you pop down to the 410.
Awesome. Yeah, go see it at the 410. Yeah. That'll be better than my blurry phone. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of raw materials, for some of the things that you do stage some of your photos, and you've taken a liking to doll heads.
Yeah. That happened during quarantine, like first quarantine. I guess I should be clear because now we're still in quarantine and I support it. But I think it was maybe April and I was bored in my house, and April is a terrible time, I think, to take pictures. I do love winter in Minnesota, but by April I'm over it. But nothing's growing yet. I'm tired of just the sticks on my ground and how trees look in April. So I was just very uninspired. And I was on eBay and somehow came across, it was just like spooky dolls. And I thought, well, this will be fun. I can set them up and like take pictures around the plants in my house or whatever. So I get this box of doll parts, mostly heads. And what I found was fun was because I would go for walks every day around St. Peter just to try and get out of my house and stay a little sane, and would bring them with me. And then it'd be like, oh, this is kind of fun to put this here on this fence post, and I'll snap a picture with my phone. And then as things did start to bloom, to put like a spooky doll head next to gorgeous apple blossoms, that type of thing. And that was fun. Both, again, I like the silliness and oddness of it, but it was interesting to have that comparison between here's this very artificial doll piece and here's this natural thing that's happening. And it did give me it was fun to start doing that, to say like, well, now I can set up a picture. Like I have a little bit more control then to say, well, where can I take this and what can I do with it? And so yeah, that's just been something I've been playing with then since April or May of this year, putting the doll heads in different places. And I do have a friend who has a farm with a great spooky barn and outbuildings. And so I've been up there a couple times to, what if I hang them in the windows? What if I put them on this board? So
do they stay? Is this a...
They mostly don't stay. I mostly take them with me. I have left some places just for fun.
That's
for
like
everyone to enjoy.
St. Peter thing though. Like you guys have a history with, wasn't that St. Peter the doll in the window? Or is that
was Janesville. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
No,
it's a small town thing. There's something weird. Yeah.
There's always got to be something creepy hanging around. Is there any of that in St. Peter?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, outside, I guess the state hospital would be the place. And there's some old buildings there. I know it's hard to get in there for tours, but they do have a museum with some interesting tour options that I've been able to see. Just trying to think. I mean, the other old buildings I remember from town, the old community center and arts and heritage building, were destroyed in the tornado of 1998. So those aren't there, but those are some nice old buildings. Off the top of my head, I can't. I mean, I guess Patrick's, right? That used to be a hospital. My grandmother was actually born in the hospital there before that was
restaurant?
Patrick's. Yeah. So that's a 3-story old building. And yeah, a long time ago, that was a hospital in St. Peter. So there's some ghosts in there. I'm sure there is. So yeah.
I wish I was born at Patrick's. That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
That's just how I would put it too.
I was born at Patrick's. I'm just gonna stay, I guess.
I came forth.
I guess you still could just be a little bit different.
Yeah, I don't know if that's happened. You're right. No one can stop that.
You're pregnant and you just decide you want to give birth at like the McDonald's on Madison, and you go there. Would that work? Would they just be like, all right, I guess we can't move you?
At some point, right? I don't think, I think it's just going to happen. So that's...
Oh, there's a new strategy.
A whole separate performance art opportunity, really, for everyone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, not for you, Willis.
I don't think I'll get that opportunity.
Yeah, I'm going to opt out also, I think.
I wanted to ask... what did you say about the winter art? You like taking photos in the winter?
I do. I love winter in Minnesota. I mean, I will also complain about it the whole time, but especially because I do love trees. I love the shapes of trees. And so I do love when you can see the branches and what they look like. I love those cold days where the sky is completely blue still. And if once you have snow on the ground too, it'll make the snow look blue. Like if you see people paint a winter scene, they're actually using mostly like blue paint, right, to capture all that between the sky and the snow. So, and I like the contrast of it. Just it's very clear and black and white, like simple lines. You can see the lines and shapes of things more. So I do like going outside and taking pictures. I also love, and I've done this a little bit with my friends, would love to get back to it this winter, just doing like silly dance or performance things outside in the winter, but in your full Minnesota snowsuit and hat and scarf and mittens and everything, all wrapped up. But then to contrast that with like, here's a yoga tree pose or place, to do that in a place where you don't normally see it. But I mean, it's winter, it's Minnesota. You have to get out and enjoy it or do something in it. So
it's very cold and serious here in Minnesota.
Right, exactly. You can't take it completely seriously the whole time.
Yeah.
I was noticing, I guess I was thinking of it as contrast too, but in more of like a time scale, the contrast of the different seasons here. And I had a photo of myself in Rasmussen Woods in that like clearing area, and it was super dead. Everything was brown, and it was just me standing there in the field. And then it was right after I had come back from there in the fall, where it was like just green and like beautiful tree color. They were starting to turn, and there was like all these, I think it's dogwoods or whatever, with the like red leaves and stuff. And it was so cool. And with photography, you can kind of get that that comparison in a different way than you can see with your own eyes. Like,
it's really fun,
cool.
to go back to the same places and see then what they look like in the different seasons. And that is a fun thing to be able to do here in Minnesota, even throughout spring. The difference between your late March and the beginning of May, and things don't even really fully leaf out till June. There's different colors of green the whole time. Early August, you start noticing like, oh, it's starting to get that washed out look. Like hasn't turned yet, but you can feel that it's gonna. So I agree. I can't imagine living in a place where there wasn't that seasonal change. I think it would just be depressing to have everything's green the whole time. I don't.
One of my favorite times every year is the like right at the beginning and end of winter, where you have these like small areas where there's like fresh snow or old snow, and then that like bright green of like new moss coming up along a stream or whatever, and it I don't know, it looks like all magical or something.
The bright greens of spring. There's a place right between St. Peter and Mankato and 169 that often floods a lot in the spring. And it's these trees that I don't know what kind of trees, but like so they grow along river banks where they can grow out of a lot of water, and they turn the brightest green in that early spring from all the water. And so many times, like there's not a place I can pull over to take a picture of it, and it would be hard to like take, I think, a good picture of it. I would want, I think, a drone or something to get up higher to see some of that. But it is just a color that you do not see other times of the year. It's only that very first green of spring.
We have cool dynamics here, definitely. It's fun to be able to capture it. And I've been trying to figure out how to, I guess I was asking about the winter too, because I've been trying to figure out how to capture photos and make things interesting in the winter, because it feels like you have a few less options or different options, but it's cool. I'll have to check out your show. And
thank you. Yeah.
Do you have some winter photos in that?
I do have a lot of winter photos.
Okay.
Yeah. And especially in winter is where I find myself when I know where there are some of those solitary trees that I like. And sometimes if they're along a field boundary, you can still see that in the winter. So even though things are mostly white, you'd have the tree and you could still see like a line of tall weeds or something separating fields. And so I am a little intentional about that in the winter, to go and, okay, let me go look at this. It's a sunny day. Maybe it's a cloudy day. Cloudy days are tough sometimes in the winter, just because then everything gets a little washed out. But then the bright sunny days are kind of tough too. So, because that can be too much light. It's a fun challenge, I guess I would say, to find something and make it look interesting and pretty when it maybe doesn't feel interesting or pretty, or you're sick of looking at it.
What started you into photography?
Great question. I always took pictures when I was younger. I tended more to use photography as a way to capture like things my friends and I were doing. So when I look back at my photos, I mean, I have tons and tons and tons of pictures of my friends, but like I wasn't using it to capture landscapes or things like that. And I really didn't start doing that until digital cameras really were invented. I remember having that and realizing, wait a second, I can just take as many pictures as fits on this memory card. And I think that's where I felt like, okay, I have the freedom to say like, this looks interesting. And I mean, I still do this now, but I mean, it took me forever to look at something and go, oh, that looks interesting. And then you take a picture and you look at the picture like, well, that's stupid. I don't like this picture. And so it really was a lot of practice in figuring out, well, here's how I can take an interesting picture of that. So, I mean, I would say probably, I feel like I really started doing digital stuff and more landscapey stuff around 2008-ish. And probably really like 2011, 2012. When I go back through my photos, like that's where I start seeing ones where I'm like, oh, I like that. Like I can tell, okay, I've started to figure out, oh, here's how I can do this and get a nice picture of something I'm looking at.
One of the things that I really enjoy about photography is how much you do create. Like I didn't even know what kind of photos I liked from my own perspective until I, took many hundreds of them and I started to notice patterns of the ones that I liked in the first place. I think that might have been what I was trying to get at before. I was like, did you notice that you liked this, or was it like something that you sought out to do?
I feel like I definitely more noticed it over time, that I wasn't intentional about like, oh, this is what I know I can do. But it was more that retrospective of looking at stuff and going, oh, I like this. And sometimes I wasn't even really sure why I liked it, but then I was able to put together like, oh, this is a weird picture of something that might be an everyday thing, but I've captured it in some way. And I do edit my photos a lot too, to kind of create that, where I'm both taking a picture and then doing a lot to it to make it feel or look a certain way. And that was also something where, I mean, I started doing that just because I could with editing apps. There's so many, different things you can play with. And then looking at it, it's like, wait a second, I like this. This is a thing that I'm going to keep doing. And so yeah, I think it's been more of the do stuff and then realize, wait a second, this is good. And then keep doing that.
What do you tend to like to bring out in your edits?
I really like, well, it kind of goes both ways. Sometimes I really like to oversaturate the colors and just make it clearly unrealistic in a sense. And I say in a sense because no camera can ever replicate what your human eye and human brain is perceiving. So to say like, oh, this is a realistic photo is, you're never going to be able to do that, right? So I just discard that. And to me, it's not about like, well, how do I just replicate this thing that I saw? But how do I like create that feeling of being outside by myself in a cornfield in a blizzard looking at this tree? Or how do here's a thing that I think looks a little bit spooky. How do I make it like really feel more spooky, or pull out like, no, I want you to notice how weird this thing looks by editing. And so adding in unrealistic color or washing out color, just kind of adding like a general like green tinge, but not other vibrant colors. Playing with black and white is a way I can do that. Adding random textures to, sometimes it's just kind of playing around and seeing when something feels like, yeah, that's the feeling I want this to have.
More wide angle or more telephoto?
More wide angle. Mostly the pictures. I do have some like high quality cameras that I play with using, but I want to say most, if not all of the pictures that'll be in my show were taken with my cell phone camera. So I'm a little more limited in terms of, I try not to zoom in with it at all because I don't like losing the photo quality with that. Yeah. So yeah, it's more just what does that capture?
It's super cool. Well, the best camera is the one you have with you.
Right? That's and because of what I like to do, I mean, yes, I will go out for drives and say, let me go find stuff. But most of my pictures were just like, I was in a place and a thing happened. And so to be able to pull out my cell phone and like quick take a few pictures and try and set up a shot and get something. I mean, that's mostly how it works for me. So
that's awesome. I even find that sometimes when I try, I don't know, maybe it's like putting too much effort into it or trying to overthink it with my DSLR. I'm like trying to get the settings right. And then just for fun, I'll take like one with my phone, and the phone one's better sometimes anyway. So it's like,
phone cameras. But no, I have that same feeling too, where I feel just like, well, I should know how to operate this DSLR camera and not just leave it on auto mode. And then I get all upset about it. So
I think that a lot of people put a lot of sabotage into their own work when they think like, oh, I need this tool to make it happen, and instead of just doing it over and over again. Because I've had that exact same thing where I thought an instrument or a camera or something would make it that much better, but really just doing it was what made it good in the first place.
Exactly. Just over and over and over, and you will figure out how to make something awesome with whatever you have available. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's often those restrictions that you have that kind of like help you find your style and things like that too.
Yeah.
So it's super cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
It's been a fun journey. Like, it still feels weird to be spending this much time talking about my art. That's not how at least I would not have defined myself as a photographer, but it's just been a really exciting thing to say, why not? I do this. I've done it. People seem to like it. I like it. Like, heck, let's frame it up and put it up at the 410. And so I'm very grateful to just have that as a resource, have the 410 as a resource here in Mankato, and have Dana be so willing to be like, sure, do it. Let's do this here. So it's been very exciting. I am very pleased.
When did that come? When did you embrace it?
Well, I shot them an email in April, and it was kind of that quarantine. I mean, I feel like I just really had a lot of experience with this pandemic to say, if there's stuff you want to do, you should do it. Like, who cares? Life is short. Like, it's just one of those like, oh, I guess any plan I make can just be thrown out the window. So why don't I just see what I can do and do the stuff I want to do? And so I sent an email saying, hey, here's some images. I'm interested in having a show sometime. Like, I know, at that point things were shut down. Like, I know things are up in the air, but just here you go. And then September, I think, is when they had reopened. And Dana sent me a message like, hey, I've got this slot. Do you want to do it? It was maybe October, because it was kind of like, she's like, I feel like you have enough pictures, but I know it's not a ton of time. I'm like, no, let's do this. I can make this happen. So yeah, I just gave it a shot and it worked.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
I like to hear that. I found that too with the pandemic. It's interesting you say that you feel like it encouraged you to reach out for things you didn't think, might not have thought were possible before. And I think that's another beautiful thing that can happen in these challenging times. People are forced to think outside of the box and try new things, and
I think you get some
themselves.
perspective, on what is important to you and what really matters. And that, chasing that and putting your time and energy into that is a good use of your time.
Yeah, but you can also sit on the couch. It's totally fine. Like, seriously.
Please also do that.
You don't have to do anything. Just try not to die. Like,
I do feel like there's two messages. Like, either some of us, and I am a person, like, I manage anxiety constantly, and my way of dealing with that is to like do more stuff. So I was very much like, all right, I'm going to do more things. I'm going to do more things. I'm going to learn things. I'm going to do things. And then there's also been a lot of, hey, you don't have to write King Lear during the quarantine. Like, stop paying attention to what Shakespeare did. And I think it's just like, do things, but don't put pressure on yourself to do anything worthwhile or meaningful. But whatever you do, that's fine. That's what you're doing.
I've felt this in myself a lot, where I'm very socially oriented and I want to do things, and that desire to go and socialize and be in those spaces, mixed with not being able to do it, just gives me general want to do or produce or make, and like, I don't have the energy for it because I'm not getting what I want out of it. And it took me a while to figure that out. And I think that's what it was, is that I had something that I wanted and I misinterpreted my own desire, and I made a bunch of crap that didn't make me feel fulfilled.
That's a really good point. Yeah. I mean, humans, we are social creatures. And so, yeah, you feel like something's missing. You're like, oh, I must just want to do more of this stuff. And then you realize, oh, at least you figured out like, oh, that's not what I need to do. Yeah. I know I do have a lot of empathy for people in these times where it's, I think, one of the hardest things you can ask people to do, to not socialize, to not come together, to not do your normal things, whatever your normal things are. And when that's taken away, people get really weird about it. And I do feel like most people can manage that and understand this is for greater good and can be creative in figuring out ways to connect, but it's not simple or easy or just a thing you can say like, oh, cool, now I'm happy doing this other thing.
And it's real sacrifice.
Oh, yeah.
I like everything I do is out in the public, in the service industry or the entertainment industry. So deciding not to do something not just is like an emotional hit, but like oftentimes it's a financial hit. And I guess I wish we lived in more of a world where the governor didn't have to tell us, we would just do the right thing because the information is apparent.
Agreed. Though I also wish we lived in a world where there were better supports for parents with kids at home, for educators, and for a lot of these small businesses, especially service and entertainment industry. If they could easily just close and still support their employees and still maintain their business, I mean, I think that would also be really helpful here. And so if places are still open, I can understand some individuals saying like, well, they're open, so I'm just going to go this one time. And now I'm just going to go this next time. And I'm just going to stay for 45 minutes and I'm going to do this. Right. So I think most people mean well, but you take those cues from your environment, and our society is not set up to support this type of situation. It is a mess.
Yeah. And people just don't like being told because that's what I see this time is they put in the 10 o'clock thing or whatever. And it's clear that came from the contact tracing to me. And that basically closed down my industry. Like I make all my money after 10 o'clock in that way. So when I hear that, it's like, okay, they're listening to the numbers and they're trying to maintain people's liberty where it is safe. And then people go ahead and they say something very silly like, oh, the virus starts at 10 p.m. Like that's not what anyone's saying. It's saying that the danger is elevated when people are making these decisions by doing that.
It's so regrettable that this was so politicized, where wearing a mask or following basic public health guidelines instead became this, like, either you did that because you were this type of person and had this type of politics, or you didn't do that because you weren't that type. And if we had been able to avoid that, I think we would be in a very different place right now. But yeah, so people see that and it's like, well, they're motivated to disregard things that either Governor Walz says or does, or disregard safety around this, because that's part of now how they're defining themselves as like part of this political tribe. And it didn't need to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. But yeah, the willingness to both ignore science and just basic common human sense. I'm not surprised, but I perhaps am just like a little bit disappointed in humans, but which is like a terrible, I mean, whatever. I'm also that person who's like, I'm just gonna quick do this one thing and I think it'll be fine. So I'm not speaking from some pedestal of like decency over here.
Yeah. And we've all done it. I mean, we've COVID positive crew over here. Yeah. Like both been through that. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's weird times.
Yeah,
definitely. Well, that's probably enough about COVID. Beep beep, timer done.
New topic.
Dancing.
Yes,
I'm a dancer, and it's just.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into dance and how that is for you. What that is like, maybe. How the dancing
Well, here's
happens.
how it is for me. No, I've danced my whole life. I started taking dance lessons when I was 4. So when I think about like who I am as an artist, it's like dance is what's core to me and myself and my soul and my happiness and yeah, and it was never something that I never had any, I don't know, goals of dancing professionally. It was never something I saw as like a job and has never been that type of thing, but it's always been just dance has been something I've looked for. It's just been something I've done. So I danced throughout all my youth and high school. I joined the Governor's Drum and Bugle Corps outside of, located in St. Peter when I was graduating high school. And color guard is very artistic expression. Dance is what I did there. Danced in college. I've been a member of a couple different modern dance companies that friends have put together around the area. most recently Rural Route Dance Ensemble, and we've put together some different shows and collaborations with local musicians. And then most recently, I've gotten back into tap dancing because that's something I did as a kid. I took tap lessons, loved it. It was great. And then it was when the Art Center of St. Peter, which had started doing the pageant and sing along, they did Jesus Christ Superstar a couple times, lovely. And then they decided, Ann Fee basically said, well, let's do Rocky Horror Picture Show, but I don't really know Rocky Horror Picture Show. I don't want to just like redo Rocky Horror Picture Show like everyone does Rocky Horror Picture Show. Let's mash it up with Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell. Like, obviously, that's what you do. And I said, well, hey, I used to tap dance. Like, I want to do Columbia's part in the Time Warp. Like, I want to do that, and then I can tap dance. And it turned into this thing where we wound up having 4 of us who tapped through not just the Time Warp, but all of the Meatloaf songs, almost all of the Meatloaf songs that we did. Like Bat Out of Hell is actually a really good tap dance song. Like it's got a good beat to it. And so, and then that got me into like, well, I should go back and take some lessons to brush up on this. I found a teacher up in the cities. There's a couple adult tap drop-in opportunities down here in Mankato. Most of them seamlessly switched over to doing Zoom lessons once COVID hit in, like by April or May, they were set up to do online classes. And I just fell back in love with it. So it's just been this passion where it's like, I forgot how fun this was and how joyous of an expression of dance it is and how like it's connected to music and rhythms. Because sometimes I get a little bit frustrated with modern dance when it seems like totally independent of the music that's happening. And so it's just been a really fun journey. So I've been doing a lot of tap dancing. And if anyone hears this and says, oh, I want to do some tap dancing, contact me. I'm renting an indoor space for the winter that is big and open and feels fairly safe and hopefully should feel a lot safer by January to just come together and do some tap and learn and play. And who knows when performance opportunities start opening back up, but they'll be there.
Did tap start as a percussion thing? Is that?
I mean, yes, kind of. Like it is often tied to rhythm of pieces. Like it came out of a lot of the original tap dancers were Black men. And so it was like a part of more like a piano where you'd have like a piano melody and then tap would provide a little bit of like rhythm. Like it wouldn't necessarily mirror the melody, but it would complement it and go along with it. And so it was these solo performers. And then it kind of got woven into like early musicals, like some of the super cheesy musicals from like the 1930s and 40s were really tap based because that was what was happening. And then it kind of came back in the 1970s and 80s.
Interesting. I've always kind of wondered, not ever actually hard enough to look into it. But I don't know why anyone want to make their shoes louder. So I thought it was maybe like a floor castanet or like you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. I just never knew anyone who did tap.
Well, yeah, if you think about just like a piano and just, having another little bit of rhythm sound as well as dance. So there's one band where it's the drummer. She's also a tap dancer. And so she'll tap and drum at the same time. And it's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I'm open. Local musicians, if you need additional rhythmic sounds from tap. I mean, I'm not that great at it, but I can do something interesting.
Yeah,
that's really cool. What's the learning curve of tap dancing look like? Do you trip and fall, or do you just like
you're not gonna fall all the way
do bad
down.
rhythms?
You're just gonna do bad rhythms. It's hard because it's a lot of like very small movements of your foot, and so just getting your foot trained to do that. Like as you walk, you're used to like doing like big movements with your foot, and so I mean anyone can tap dance slow. The trick is just like how fast do you want to go? So I feel like for a beginner, like you can learn it well enough to feel pretty cool and feel really good about yourself. You can learn the patterns, you can learn it. It's just then the trick is as you get better and better, you'll find you'll just be able to speed it up because your foot will get better at making those small movements and like isolating just the heel or just the toe, those types of things. But I think it's a nice thing for beginners because you can pick it up enough right away to feel good about it. You know, like it's important to be able to learn a little bit quickly, I think, when you're learning something brand new. And it is just fun to have your shoes be louder and make fun sounds with your feet. So, yeah.
Loud shoes.
It's the like stompy child within us all. Like,
Right, exactly. Yeah, you
to-
have a tantrum about something, like you can get that out through tap. It's a lot of stomping. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, do you have any other questions, Jacob?
I kind of have one question.
Let's get into
Fire
it.
away. Yeah.
I was gonna say, has any of the movement, the movement that you've worked on through dance in your life changed your eye for photography at all?
I tend not to photograph people, at least not like in terms of what I think of as like my art photos so much. I mean, I wish I could. I love the gorgeous photography that people can do of dance, and I have some friends who can do that really well. So, I mean, if anything, it's made me... Sometimes I get frustrated with photography because, like, what's gorgeous about dance is that there's movement, and time is passing and things are happening within that space of time, whereas photography is just one moment without any of that context of what else is happening. So sometimes I look at photography as an art and say, like, well, this is in no way capturing the bigger picture of this, whereas dance, it's a bigger thing. There's more there that's happening. I don't know that anything I've learned like as a dancer necessarily feeds into my photography. It might just be the other way around. Like I think about when I'm dancing, like what I'm doing, because I tend to just think about how things look in space in general. But I don't even think I answered. I think I just said, there's a whole bunch of things that just jumped in my brain just right now.
I really liked what you said about the just dance having a component of time, whereas photography doesn't, because that is interesting. And that's obviously like the difference between video and photo as well. But I think that it's sometimes we forget to account for time in the way that we observe things or experience things. So it's great that you jumped to that.
Well, and it's neat then, I guess, as an observer of photography, then you get to put your own experiences onto that more because some of that context is stripped away. Whereas if you're watching like a video production or a live like thing happening in front of you, you're looking at that, but you're not necessarily able to add a lot of your own self or your own assumptions to that just because there's more being provided to you. So that might be, maybe as an observer, that's why we like to look at photography, because we get to make it, we get to bring more of ourselves to whatever we're seeing.
Yeah, you can add the motion or the future to it.
Yeah.
Or the past. Okay.
Yeah, you can add your own time lapse, time sense. Possibly.
Very cool.
I'm satisfied.
Well, Emily, thank you for joining us today on the podcast. I'd like to give you an opportunity to plug your show again and shout out anything else you'd like to talk about.
Definitely. So the show is Strange Eons. It will be opening at the 410 on Friday, November 27th, and it'll run through Sunday, December 13th. Their hours are, like I said, Thursday through Sundays. The specific hours are posted on their website and Facebook page, so double check that. Masks are required in the space, and they're doing a really good job of being conscious about keeping numbers down. It's a small space, so I mean, 10, 15 minutes, you can do a good walkthrough and see everything that's there. So I do feel like it's an opportunity to leave your house to go to a place to do something that still is a safe thing that you can do right now when we're running out of some of those other opportunities. So yeah, I would love for people to check it out. It's delightful for me to be able to have an opportunity to exhibit this art that I just wind up doing. So I'm excited to hear what people have to think about it. And I can't think of anything else to shout out.
You got any social media plugs or a page?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be helpful. You can find me. I have a website, emilystarkphotography.com. I also have a Facebook page also called Emily Stark Photography. If you're interested in the stuff I do, I try to semi-regularly post to both of those places just to share the things I do. And that's a good place also to get in touch with me if you aren't already connected with me in some way. So I would love to hear from people, or maybe see you at the 410, or hear that you went and saw something there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on your first show. That's super cool.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing it. Thank you, and we'll catch you next time, TF Casters.